Good afternoon. Welcome to a updated NYNJPA weather video discussion on the upcoming rainstorm for the coast and a snow and ice storm for the interior that will be developing later on this evening and through the overnight hours. Now, here's the current observations. And it's pretty interesting to see here right along the coast. We have an easterly wind anywhere from 10 to 15 miles per hour, and this easterly wind is transporting plenty of warm air into the northern Mid-Atlantic. Now, warm relative to freezing. We're above freezing, but notice our dew points are in the upper teens to upper 20s along the coast. And what that basically tells me is that when this precipitation moves in, our temperatures will initially fall back into the lower 30s, allowing for snowfall initially, but that snow will have a hard time sticking, and then it'll change over to rain as warmer air mixes in here throughout this evening. Over southern New Jersey, I think the snow threat is pretty much over. I think we're pretty much dealing with rain here from Monmouth County on south through Cape May County and back through Cumberland. And for the most part, I really don't expect much in the way of winter weather impacts, but we will have rain this evening. Now, the interior is interesting here because we have temperatures basically in the upper 20s to mid 30s, but our dew points are very low in the single digits and lower teens. And that tells me that one, we're going to be dealing with virga, which means that we're going to see a cooling of the atmosphere via evaporational cooling. But it also tells me that this cold air mass is going to be able to lock in because we're going to have a lot of cooling in order to get the precipitation to fall in the first place. So I'm very concerned about these locations in northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, especially around Sussex County, much of the Hudson River Valley north of White Plains, and also central and northern Connecticut. Taking a look at the latest pressure, you can see that the high pressure system is shifting off the coast, and that's really, really important because it's going to allow milder air to work in at the coast and at the surface. Meanwhile, we have an area low pressure developing around North Carolina, just off the coastal waters here. We have another area low pressure developing in the Ohio River Valley, and one just off the screen over the western Great Lakes and northern plains. These low pressure systems will eventually converge into one primary low pressure system off of the New England coast by tomorrow morning. But before we get to that point, we're going to be dealing with a lot of warm air pushing northward. Now, 925 millibars, which is about 3,000 feet off the ground, let's say, you could see that we're starting to see that warm air advection from the ocean take place. Winds are coming in from the east, pretty strong too, anywhere from 15 to 30 knots. And that warm air is starting to really push into southern New Jersey and also starting to influence portions of the New York City metropolitan area and also the northern interior. What we're going to watch for is for this layer at 925 millibars and higher layers in the atmosphere warm faster than the surface. And that's what's going to bring the threat for ice for much of the northern interior. Looking at 850 millibars, it stands out even more, where we have a nice southerly to southeasterly wind, again anywhere from 10 to 30 knots, increasing to 40 knots and 50 knots as you move further west. And notice we have a stronger warm air advection developing over the Ohio River Valley and western Pennsylvania. We have that cold air lodged into central Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, up through New England. But notice that that cold air is starting to give way as that air is coming right, as that wind, should I say, is coming right off the Atlantic and warming the entire layer of the atmosphere at 850 millibars, which is 6,000 feet up. So as you can see, we have warming influences at almost every level of the atmosphere, but we have very dry air at the surface. And this is a major warning sign for ice, sleet, and freezing rain as we move forward for tonight. Also, I want to point out, we have our strongest moisture transport, which is this green and red right here, focused more towards the Ohio River Valley. And that's a very important key factor too, because what that's telling me is that the best dynamics and best moisture is clearly going to be focused to the west of the coast. Also notice that our primary low pressure system is clearly over the northern plain. So there's no doubt that we're warming up here along the coast. The question is whether this moisture advection you see here starts to shift more towards northeastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson River Valley, and northern Connecticut, or does it remain more towards central New York and bypass the heaviest precipitation over our northern interior? Looking at the radar, I have some interesting observations here. See these thunderstorms here? They're basically strangling the ability of moisture transport over portions of western Pennsylvania. Now, what I'm expecting is that these thunderstorms are going to weaken. This is going to blossom more, and you're going to see this heavy precipitation lift northeast towards northeastern Pennsylvania. The New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan areas get a break for this afternoon, but we'll start to see that precipitation redevelop later on this afternoon, more towards rush hour, with some light rain snow showers intensifying through the evening, changing over to rain along the coast, and a wintry mix developing over the interior. Now here's the infrared satellite picture. You can see that high pressure system shifting towards the coast. We have basically a series of low pressure systems from North Carolina all the way back towards the northern plains. Here's our primary low pressure system. This is our future coastal storm that's going to become the primary low pressure system by tomorrow morning to the east of Long Island. And all these low pressure systems are eventually going to give way to that coastal low pressure system by tomorrow morning. Now, first I want to take a look at the WRAP model guidance. This is basically the latest model guidance from the National Weather Service here that takes our current observations and basically creates a really rapid model every hour. And here we are, the latest model guidance here, latest observations. So you can clearly see at 850 millibars, we're pretty chilly. But look what happens over the next 18 hours. You can see that warm air really invading northward, and we rise above freezing even over the northern interior. Keep an eye on that, because as our temperatures warm over the northern interior, because our main 850 millibar low remains over the Great Lakes, look at what happens at the surface. Here we are, starting again, same time period, right about this hour, high pressure right off the coast, pretty much slightly above freezing, right? Well, let's look at the next 17 hours. We warm up and then we cool down once that precipitation really takes hold here over the northern interior. And this is where I'm really concerned because remember, at 850 millibars, we're warming above freezing, which means that we have rainfall or at least snow melting at that layer. And it's also doing the same thing at 925 millibars. But at the surface, this is a signature for the potential for freezing rain, especially early tomorrow morning over portions of northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, the Hudson River Valley, north of White Plains, and central and northern Connecticut. So this is an important key aspect to keep an eye on. And as you can see at the surface, as this low pressure system starts to give way to the coastal low, that cold air is going to be reinforced as winds back more towards the northeast, drawing more cold air from New England down towards the coastal plain. So what can we expect moving forward? Well, first let me show you what we're going to be looking forward to as far as precipitation. Here we are with that nice break here over southeastern Pennsylvania, right? As we move forward, that break moves through, and then we get our moderate precipitation this evening. And notice how fast this moves. This is a very fast-moving low-pressure system, and I think the latest model guidance is really starting to illustrate the fact that it's going to take a while for the primary low-pressure system to transfer towards the coast. So as a result, I think the heaviest precipitation remains basically over central New York and western New York, northeastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, the Hudson River Valley, and northern Connecticut is clipped by this heavy precipitation, but I don't think they see the true brunt. I think the true brunt stays over central and northern New York and off towards New England, where snowfall totals will push over a foot of snow in some locations. So, based on that, the forecast is pretty much unchanged here. However, I'm more likely to see the lower end of these snowfall totals than the upper end. I'm very concerned about ice, once again, for these locations based on the latest WRAP guidance I'm seeing. Still like mostly rain along the coast, a trace to maybe 2 inches of snow on grassy surfaces for Long Island, the New York City metro, and also the Philadelphia metro. More likely a trace the way trends are moving right now. A little bit further north and west and over the coastal regions of Connecticut, looking at 1 to 3 inches. Most likely most locations are going to be around an inch. Look out for that ice. I'm very concerned about freezing rain here. Let's hope that it gets to 33 degrees before heavy precipitation moves through, and this only ends up being up to 500 of an inch rather than a quarter of an inch. Further north, this is where I think that it's going to be the best potential for significant icing. Scranton, Hazleton, Middletown, back towards just to the north of New Haven, central Connecticut, even portions of Hartford. Keep an eye on the potential for this snow changing over to sleet and freezing rain tonight. Now, the changeover I'm expecting right now is somewhere between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. And then from that point on, we'll see that freezing rain mix until about 8 a.m. tomorrow, when we'll start to see a transition to all rain for all locations. And finally, further north towards, let's say, extreme northeastern Pennsylvania, between Poughkeepsie and Albany, and Hartford on northward, look for 4 to 8 inches of snow. Again, I'm thinking more towards that 4-inch line as you head further east. And so with that, I think also we're going to be dealing with at least up to a tenth of an inch ice here, potentially over portions of Hartford on northward. Well, that is the forecast for now. I'll have live coverage throughout the evening and afternoon hours on this developing storm. Hopefully we start to see a transition more towards warmer conditions than expected rather than colder conditions than expected as we continue to move on. That is your forecast discussion for today. I'll have live coverage throughout the day. Thank you, and stay safe out there.